Good morning, Vigo. It's Doug from the Domestic Abuse Intervention Program. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good, Doug. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Vigo, I'm giving you a call about Mr. Chris Reynolds, who, as you know, is in our Domestic Abuse Intervention Program. And I'm calling you specifically around our concerns that his jealous thoughts and beliefs appear to be increasing since his separation 3 months ago. And they seem to be exacerbated by his alcohol use.
Yep. That sounds, very like him. It really doesn't surprise me to hear this. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and share this with me.
Not at all, Vigo. I think it's important that we're on the same page here. My concerns, in addition to his substance increase, his jealous thoughts and behaviors, that it appears that Chris is using his children to spy on his partner, Tracy.
Really? Is there a way you can share examples, and how is he really using the kids to spy on Tracy?
Sure. In group, Chris admits to asking the children questions about their mom's actions, specifically who she talks to. Is she seeing someone? What time does she come home? Does she come home late? Do any men come to the house? He also criticizes Tracy to the children, specifically telling them, "Your mom doesn't care about you, she only cares about herself."
Wow, this is very concerning, Doug. Perhaps I should be having a conversation with Tracy, and let her know that we have these concerns, that these are very indicators of risk for herself and how it might be negatively impacting the kids as well. This is concerning.
Yeah, Vigo, I think that's a great idea. I think the other thing that's important to keep in mind is that Chris is very angry about his, in his opinion, limited access to the children, and his jealous and negative thinking have him convinced that he's going to be replaced by another guy. When we confront Chris about these thoughts, although he says that there's no proof that this is going to happen, he says his actions are motivated by his love and concern for the children, and he wants to be sure that they're safe.
Okay. Doug, do you have any idea if
Mr. Reynolds has any insight as to how his actions are impacting his children, and how all this using the children and using them to kind of like put a tap on Tracy is really negatively impacting them? Do you have any idea about that?
Vigo, it appears he has no insight into this. He believes, in fact, that pointing out what he perceives to be his partner's faults to his children is good for them, because he believes they need to know what Tracy is like so they don't think that he is the bad guy.
Now, Doug, coming from the Batter's Program perspective, do you have any ideas how to strategize? Do you have any recommendations about how to deal with this situation?
Well, I think the first thing, Vigo, that comes into our mind is that we're recommending that Chris get an evaluation for his substance misuse and follow through with all treatment recommendations. We're also recommending that he attend AA meetings, and specifically that what you can help us with, in addition to recommending these as well, is that he get involved in a program, a fatherhood program approved by your office.
Well, as a matter of fact, as part of Mr. Reynolds' service plan, he not only needs to complete the Batter's Program, but he also needs to complete a substance abuse evaluation as well as follow recommendations.
I will definitely check the status of that referral.
I'll have to find out what's going on with that. There's also a DCF approved fatherhood program in the area that I will certainly make sure that he also participates. I think this is a great idea.
Vigo, I think that would be very helpful for Chris to know that your office and our office are on the same page regarding all of these suggestions. The other question I have, and I wanted to pick your brain about, is the whole issue of visitation. Currently, he has unsupervised visits, and we were talking in supervision about whether or not it makes any sense to look toward the possibility of having those supervised.
I understand. I hear what you're saying, Doug. The only situation is that we as an agency, we have no control and no say about those unsupervised visits. This is something that it's probably done through the restraining order. And in this case, Tracy would have to make any modifications about contact between father and the children. So that's something that we would have to have a conversation with her about. However, I also know that there's an ongoing CNP case going on in the juvenile court. Maybe that could be another venue for Tracy to explore how contact between Mr. Reynolds and the children is at this moment, from this moment on.
Well, that's helpful to know that there are two possible venues for this modification request. I'm happy to let Tracy know what options are available to her through the 209A process.
Sounds like a good plan. And you know what I'll do? I'll also talk to Tracy about the CMP process and how she can also try to find out ways to limit, if that's what she wants to do, limit the contact between father and the children.
So Vigo, thank you for filling me in on that. That's another option that I wasn't aware of, and that's very helpful to know. I also wanted to talk a little bit with you about our concern about Chris's risk to Tracy, particularly in light of his past threats. He, for example, has said to her in the past, "You better watch your back. You better be careful, nobody lives forever. And you're going to be very sorry if you leave me." So given these threats, as well as his jealous thoughts and beliefs, I am concerned that any modification of the visitation order, particularly a restriction, could increase his level of risk to Tracy.
Doug, I totally agree.
I agree that any effort, any steps to alter contact between Mr. Reynolds and his children might increase risk and harm to Tracy herself. So I totally agree that this requires, extensive planning and also Tracy's input as well. I think this is something that might trigger an escalation in violence, if anything, if we don't treat this properly.
I'm so glad that we're on the same page, particularly, Vigo, as it relates to increased risk for Tracy. If we do anything that initially we think is a good idea, I think you're right. We need to be very deliberate about this and thoughtful about this. The other thing I have to let you know is I've reached out to probation and expressed to them the same concerns I'm expressing to you. The probation officer is Mike, and he indicated that he'd love to have a conversation with you if you thought that would be helpful so that we could all be on the same page regarding Chris.
Absolutely. I'll find ways to either get a release or do the proper action to have a conversation with Mike. I think it's important we all are on the same page.